Before I start, let me introduce myself first. My name is Muhammad Afik, and me and my group member will talk about liberalism. First of all, the father of this philosophy is John Locke. John Locke is considered the father of liberalism because he helped establish the key principle that continue to shape modern democratic societies. His emphasis on individual freedom and limited government has informed debate around the civil liberties, economic policy, and social welfare for centuries. So, what is liberalism really is? Liberalism is a political and moral philosophy that places a strong emphasis on individual right, liberty, equality, and the rule of law. Liberalism cares a lot about the right of the people. This means believing that everyone has right and freedom, like being able to speak freely, practice any religion, and on their own things. Liberals says it's really important to protect this right to that each person can be safe and respected. Liberals think that it's really important for people to be able to say what they think without being censored or punished for it. Liberalism supports freedom of religion and belief that individuals should be able to practice their chosen faith without the government or other institution getting involved. Liberals believe that it's very important to protect people's right because it's not only necessary for the law and politics but also for the happiness and respect of each person. Freedom is a very important belief in liberalism. Liberals support people being able to make their own choice without the government or other group getting in his way. This also includes freedom in money and social things and not just politics. Freedom is a very important idea in liberalism. It means that individuals should have power to make their own decision. Liberals believe that people should be able to make their own decision about their lives, values, and also relationships. Liberalism supports people's right to be involved in politics and have political freedom. This means you have the right to vote, share your political view, and join peaceful protests. Liberals believe in having freedom in the economy and they want people to have more economic choices. Liberalism thinks that it's important for everyone to have an equal chance to success and for discrimination based on things people are born with to be reduced. The aim is to create a fair and welcoming society where people contribution are valued and people can success no matter where they are come from. This promise to treat everyone equally is not just a rule of idea in politics or maybe law, but it's also shown a bigger vision of fairness and injustice of society. The rule of law is very important because it's part of liberal idea. This means that everyone, even important people, must follow the rule and punish if they don't. This rule stop people from using power however they want and make sure that everyone is treated fairly. In liberal philosophy, the rule of law is not just a legal rule but a basic element that support the whole society. It makes sure that everyone follow the same law so people cannot use power however they want. This help make a fair and just society where people can rely on the legal system to protect their right and hold everyone responsible no matter who they are. We can say that liberalism is a comprehensive philosophy that seeks to create a society where individuals have the freedom to pursue their own goals, treated equally and protected by legal framework that uphold the rule of law. It's a balance between individual right and societal order, with an emphasis on fostering a just and inclusive environment.
Moving on to the main point of liberalism, there are three main points, that is individual liberty, rule of law, and equality. First is individual liberty. Liberalism places a high value on individual freedom and personal autonomy. It emphasizes the idea that individuals should have the right to make choices about their own lives, including their political, economic, and social activities. Moving on to rule of law, liberals advocate for the rule of law as a fundamental principle. This means that everyone, including those in government, is subject to the law. It ensures a fair and just legal system that protect individual rights and prevent arbitrary use of power. And moving on to the equality, liberalism promotes the idea of equality, both in terms of legal and political rights and in opportunities. It rejects discrimination based on factors such as race, gender, religion, or social class, and strives for a more inclusive and egalitarian society.
On my part, I'm gonna talk about the analysis on liberalism in terms of its strengths and weaknesses. Before I proceed, I wanted to recap back the concept of liberalism in short. Liberalism, as we all know, it's not on making the right decision, but it's more on making a rational thinking, and a rational decision as it balances the good and the bad. As this said, liberalism does not immediately reject or accept things blindly. There are consensus to the things that has to be reviewed carefully. With all that said, liberalism has its own strength, but also its own weaknesses. Let's look into the strength. Liberalism's strength can be looked into by promoting individual freedoms. Liberalism prioritizes individual freedom in terms of personal autonomy and civil rights. This means it practices on the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and open assembly, while emphasizing the importance of individual choice in various aspects of life, such as economic decisions, lifestyle, and political affiliation. Here are some explanations on what these rights are on liberal context. First, freedom of speech. In liberalism, is not an absolute right. The question is if this right should depend wholly on the truth of the respective opinion or statement. This justifies free speech on the ground of autonomy, tends to make truth a moral requirement of speech. Based on civility and public reason, do restrict freedom of speech even further, often making a form of recognition a precondition of free speech. This reveals to be a particularly relevant in multicultural context and discussion about blasphemy. First, there should be the absolute principle of free speech regarding government and the higher power, whereas speak truth to power, or in another word, encourages people to courageously and honestly communicate their beliefs, opinions, or criticism, especially when addressing those in positions of authority or influence. Second, free speech should underlie no constraint where important individual rights are at stake. Third, academic freedom has a special status and should not be subject to the same limit as freedom of expression more generally. Fourth, in civil society and the public sphere, a more moderate approach to free speech should be adopted based on civility, public reason, and recognition. Yet, any limit should be of moral and not legal by nature. Next is marriage equality. In liberalism, it mostly focusing on treating the people equally, so thus the rights. Marriage equality means it advocates for LGBTQ rights, enabling same-sex couples to marry legally and enjoy equal rights. We can look at Thailand and Taiwan, two Asian nations, to legalize same-sex marriage. Such movement gives critical opportunity for this community to practice their rights without being discriminated or being gender hate crime. Liberal democracy thrives on human fundamental progress, as in same-sex marriage has no valid argument against it being harmful to anybody. Now, let's look into reproductive rights in terms of abortion, where liberalism supports individuals' decisions regarding their bodies, encompassing access to contraceptives, abortion rights, and comprehensive sexual health education. A woman's right to abortion should be seen as a means to protect herself from the non-consensual intrusion and use of her body by an unwelcome fetus. If the right to an abortion is indeed the best understood as a right to defend oneself against the unwanted pregnancy due to rape or unprotected sex, then it no longer matters whether or not the fetus is a human being or a person. A woman, no less than a man, has a right to defend herself against this. This has been a big debate, especially at the United States, where the right to abort bill has been passed and both sides has been giving their opinions respectively. On my next point is freedom of religion, where it promotes the right to practice any religion or none at all, safeguarding individuals from persecution or discrimination. Liberal societies often establish laws ensuring religious freedom as it fosters social cohesion, tolerance, and respect on diversity. The concept of religious freedom has been a key principle in modern liberalism, particularly in the United States. Liberal arguments historically supported freedom of religion for the sake of civil peace. However, as religious and ideological pluralism has developed, there is a concern that it may ironically contribute to intolerance and ideological divisions, posing a threat to the peaceful liberal order. The dynamic of pluralism, rather than consistently fostering harmony, could potentially lead to new challenges, including increase of intolerance and division. Moving back to liberalism's strength, it can be seen into them promoting human rights. The definition is not far from my first point, but human rights are universal, which apply to all individuals by virtue of their humanity. They are considered fundamental and inalienable, encompassing a broad range of civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. Human rights are often organized in international treaties and agreements, setting a global standard for the treatment of individuals. For instance, women's rights or feminism. Women's rights has been exist since July 13, 1848, under the reason women were not allowed to vote. Now look at the effect on that movement globally. Now all women across the world can vote. Not just that, women also were not to allowed on property, no legal rights on their children, discouraged from working outside from home, and disparities on their wages compared to men. Now we can see women able to pursue all these rights. This, however, does not take effect immediately. it took them century, which was take effect on 1998, for the movement to be able to be implemented. As this stand, my point about liberalism is not rejecting or accepting things directly and blindly, as it needs critical observation. Moving on, the next rank is liberalism seen as democratic governance. Democratic governance in liberalism aims to empower individuals, ensuring their participation in decision-making processes while safeguarding their rights and freedom within a framework of rule of law and checks on government power. In terms of democratic governance, liberalism emphasizes that the legitimacy of a government is derived from the consent of the governed. It promotes the idea that the authority of the government comes from the people through fair and free elections. In liberal democracy, the rule of law dictates that all, including government officials, are bound by laws. This ensures equal treatment under the law and prevent arbitrary exercise of power. Other than that, in the democratic governance as well, it emphasizes economic in terms of free economic policies, which means any economic matters able to adapt accordingly, fitting with global economy policies with only a minimal amount of government intervention. This encourages not just competitive but also innovation in the economic sector. As much as we talk about liberalism's strength, let's move on to its weaknesses. The first weaknesses can be seen from the strength. As I mentioned before, liberalism promotes individual rights. However, this can sometimes be overlooked, thus resulting in societal disparities when it's not managed properly, which lead to economic inequality. In liberal economic system, where there's minimal government intervention in the market, disparities in wealth can arise. The unrestricted pursuit of individual economic interests may result in a concentration of wealth among a few, widening the gap between the rich and the poor. This can lead to social tensions, reduced social mobility, and unequal access to opportunities such as education or healthcare, undermining the core principle of equality that liberalism aims to uphold. One notable example is the United States. Although the US has been shifting to more liberalism to this day, we can still see the economic disparities in terms of income. We can see the white community still holds and dominates the social income group, other than the other races there, especially the black community, whereas the history of black people treated as slavery back in the day until it was fought over and ended that era. However, the black community is still treated as a second class, which derived from being treated in an equal manners. Next is authoritarian challenges. Authoritarian challenges represent a weakness within liberalism due to the ideologies emphasis on individual freedoms, which can struggle against authoritarian regimes that prioritize centralized control over personal liberties. Authoritarian challenges to liberalism manifest when governments or leaders favor control, suppression of dissent, and limitation on individual rights and freedom. These challenges can undermine liberal principles such as freedom of speech, freedom of religion, open assembly, and other civil liberties. For instance, in authoritarian states, individual freedom might be restricted for the sake of maintaining government control or silencing the opposition. Such regimes may censor media, stifle political dissent, curtail freedom of expression, and suppress civil society organizations, directly conflicting with liberal ideas that prioritize individual autonomy and the protection of human rights. Liberal democracy often face difficulties in dealing with or countering such authoritarian challenges, as they may prioritize diplomatic means, economic sanction, or international pressure to address human rights violation, often navigating a fine line between intervention and respect for sovereignty. Overall, the strengths and weaknesses represent a nuanced view of liberalism, highlighting its contribution to individual rights and freedom, alongside its challenges in addressing societal disparities and facing authoritarian oppositions.
So we move on to the next slide, which is the impacts of liberalism theory towards international relations. The impacts of liberalism theory towards international relations have been a subject of extensive study and debate in the field of political science. Liberalism, as a political ideology, emphasizes individual rights, freedom, equality, democracy, and the rule of law. In the context of international relations, liberalism theory posits that these principles can also be applied to the interactions between states. One of the key impacts of liberalism theory on international relations is its emphasis on cooperation and multilateralism. Liberals argue that states can achieve their objectives more effectively through cooperation and collective action rather than through conflict and competition. This has led to establishment of various international organizations and institutions such as the United Nations, World Trade Organization, and International Monetary Fund, which aim to promote peace, stability, and economic development through collaboration among states. Furthermore, liberalism theory has had an impact on economic relations between states. Liberals advocate for free trade and open markets as means to promote economic growth and prosperity. They argue that removing trade barriers and promoting economic interdependence can lead to increased cooperation and reduce likelihood of conflicts between states. The concept of economic interdependence is closely linked to liberalism theory, as it suggests that states become more reliant on each other for their economic well-being, reducing incentives for conflicts. Another impact of liberalism theory on international relations is its focus on non-state actors such as non-governmental organizations (NGOs), multinational corporations (MNCs), and international advocacy groups. Liberals argue that these factors play a significant role in shaping global politics and can influence state behavior and decision-making processes. This has led to increased recognition of the importance of civil society and transnational actors in international relations. Last but not least, liberalism also promotes the idea of democratic governance and human rights as essential components of international relations. Liberals argue that democracies are less likely to go to war with each other and are more inclined to respect human rights within their own borders. As a result, liberalism theory has influenced the promotion of democracy and human rights as important norms in international relations. That's all from me. Thank you.
To conclude in our presentation, despite the criticism, we may still be considering liberalism in this 21st century for its promotion of individual freedom, fostering democratic governance, and encouraging economic opportunities, as this ideology provides a framework that helps to adapt through its complexities throughout the continent, catering the diverse needs of a modern society. By embracing liberalism, we can still pave the way for a more inclusive and progressive future. And liberalism, however, even if it's still influential till this day, may still have some flaws here and there. Critics argued that liberalism can clash with the collective needs of the society, which could highlight a potential tension between personal rights and social responsibility. Additionally, applying liberal principles in diverse cultural contexts may also be challenging in some ways and requires more careful consideration in their decision making. But Despite such imperfection, proponents argue that its adaptability and commitment towards the human rights is what makes it a very valuable asset for governance practice. As evidence, some leaders such as Justin Trudeau in Canada and Angela Merkel from Germany prove that liberalism is still relevant till this day and can be still effective in governance practice.